Hello, and welcome to Adventures in Producing. My name is Wendy Mitchell. This is a podcast and video series I started to spotlight the real unsung heroes of the film industry and the TV industry. And those are independent producers. And why not? I'm spotlighting amazing women who produce. You might have noticed I've been on a little hiatus. No official reason. I just have too many jobs. But I had sort of paused this for a few months and realized I really miss talking to these amazing people. And I hope you missed hearing their stories. So today's episode is with London based producer Faye Ward of Fable Pictures. I first heard about Faye when she was working at Ruby Films with Alison Owen, probably on films like Other Boleyn Girl, Brick Lane, Tamara Drew, Jane Eyre, Suffragette. And then she set up her own company, Fable Pictures, in 2016, and has gone on to make films like Wild Rose, Stan and Ollie, Rocks, and of course some great TV like the BAFTA and Emmy winning Mr. Loverman. Love it. Um, and I have to admit something. I had always assumed maybe Faye was really super duper like Nepo baby because Alison Owen is kind of fancy
Yeah.
and kind of famous. And I just thought, oh, maybe she's just, runs in those circles. And I did a panel with Faye, a month or two ago. And Faye was telling me her sort of origin story. And she's not necessarily a person of privilege. And that makes me love her hustle and what she has achieved even more. I mean, the work also stands on its own, some amazing films and TV shows. So let's find out how Faye has made it all happen for herself. So, Faye, you didn't go to film school. Is that
No,
right? No.
yeah, no. I didn't actually go to university.
Okay.
It's a bit controversial, I
So,
know.
when did you start to think maybe the film world could be a place for you?
Um, it's a bizarre thing. I basically always wanted to work in film and TV. I sort of, from when I was really little. I know it sounds a bit of a weird thing to say. I didn't know anyone in film and
Hmm.
TV. I love watching film and television. And it's back in the day when you had video recorders and you would pretty much watch probably the four films that you had in your video recording catalog and or what was on at Blockbusters. And me and my little brothers, we used to just watch them back to back all day long. And I've watched about five films about 1,000 times. And
Tell
there's
us one of those five just to get to know you
Thief of
a little more.
Baghdad was one, and the original Fay Ray King Kong.
Okay. All right. Interesting.
Old
So, put
films,
those on
both of
the
them.
list.
But that's
Yeah.
my parent, my dad's well, my mum and dad are pretty kind of cinephiles. They really
Okay.
love movies. So I just always knew, and so even when I was in primary school, um, I wanted to be part of like any school production, but I never wanted to be on stage. Particularly,
Okay.
I always wanted to do the behind the scenes. And then we were really lucky. I used to go to school in Clapham Junction in Battersea, and we were invited to do like a backstage walk through Wimbledon Polka Theatre, the little children's theatre. And I was like, oh my God, I really want to look at that because I felt like it was all in the same world. It was like all the behind the scenes. So the moment I had a little bit of independence and a bit of zeitgeist, I went off to try and meet anybody I could meet who worked in television and film. And one of the things I used to do as a Saturday job between school and college was to be a lifeguard around South London. I worked all in the South London leisure centres. And so anyone I met who vaguely had a sniff of working in the media industry, I would beg them to go and work for them for free. Um, and I basically got one tiny little intern job on the TV show TVAM that was a morning
Oh,
news
yeah.
show. And my job was like just 2 weeks work, but my job was to be like production assistant, book people's trains and things. And that was my first like little tiny tick of something on my CV beyond being a lifeguard. And then sort of moved my way up basically as much as I could.
Well, first of all, good for you. I used to be a lifeguard and all we wanted to do was party. So you were being
Oh,
a
we did a bit of that
specific
too.
lifeguard.
We
Okay.
did a bit of that too. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then how was it from TV AM that you started to make more connections, or how did you start to sort of break in or find Allison even?
To be honest, the big thing I did was because I was a lifeguard, I went and I had no money. I was trying to think of what to do. I applied for Camp America.
Oh yeah.
I went to the Camp America conference and I knew Hollywood was in California. and I didn't have any understanding of how large California was. Just the naivety was strong, and I picked a camp. You weren't allowed to like pick a specific camp. You had to pick a camp like within a state.
Okay.
I picked California, and I was given Big Bear Mountain. And so I was like 17, 18 maybe. And I went, and I don't know if you know about Camp America, but they pay for you to be there. You
Yeah,
don't
I've heard
get
of
paid.
it. I have a friend who did it. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you don't get paid. You get like some kind of nominal weekly fee or
But
something.
it gets you there. Yeah.
Gets you there, you get a 6 month visa, and you get to be in a different part of the world if you can't afford to go there. And I got to teach children swimming in Big Bear Mountain. And when I was there, this is the key bit, the gentleman who ran Big Bear Mountain was this lovely guy called John. And one day he was filming the children. And I was like, oh, what are you doing? And he was like, oh, I'm putting together next year's summer reel. So when we finish this, we'll put together a little camp reel. And then that's what goes into schools for promotion to see if people would pay to bring their kids back. And I was like, oh, I'll help you because that's what I want to do. And I helped him out across a few Saturdays or whatever. And then he said to me, oh, I'm a documentary filmmaker by trade or by hobby or whatever you want to call it in our world. And I've just been given, well, I'm hopefully just been given $1 million to make my first feature. And I said to him, this is a long while ago now.
Mm.
I said, if I fly back, can I work on your movie as a runner?
Wow.
And he called me like 6 months later and was like, yeah, I've got
And
the
was that a fiction feature or a documentary?
yeah, fiction feature, yeah. And so I went back to America. We stayed in the camp. So he based the whole movie at the camp. We
Smart
then
man.
we
Yeah.
then remoted out on different days and traveled all sorts of places in America. It was honestly extraordinary experience. I mean, it was a really lovely, brilliant script. It was a first feature for most people involved, so no one had a clue what they were doing, definitely including me, who had no idea. So what was so lucky about that is I was able to do a bit of casting, like essays. I was I had to look after some ants for a minute or two. I did a bit of
As
script
in the insect.
as in the insects. There's a
Okay,
whole
you had like an
scene.
ant farm.
Exactly. They wanted this scene where the ants followed the sugar and anyway, all sorts of things. So I basically came back from America at the age of about 18 and a bit or so around that time. And I'd been to Hollywood. I'd made a proper movie, which wasn't proper really in a big sense with capital P.
What's the movie called?
Is Harrington's Notes.
Okay, thank you.
And I came back and I was like, look at me. I've been in Hollywood. I've been making films, or a film. And back in the day, they used to have a diary service for runners over at Pinewood, I think it was. So I called up and I said, can I join your diary service? I've got 1 credit. And they put my name down. And then in that, like literally within a base of a day, I got a phone call from Chris Simons. Do you know the producer?
Yeah.
And he was making a first digital film. It was when digital was this new thing, shot in Brixton, again, super low budget, I don't mean cobbled together in a negative sense. I mean everyone working very hard to get something together. And I think I was the first person on the pile. I mean, it was literally nothing beyond that. And he basically said, are you compass? Are you saying, can you drive? And I actually can drive, but I didn't have a car, but I lied and said I had a car. And we negotiated whatever my weekly rate was going to be, which is probably more money than had ever been earned ever.
Yeah.
It's like 350 quid or something. And I used that money and hired a car so I could work on the job. And
And you were a runner, or were you like a PA, or
no,
just
just
a runner?
running.
Yeah.
I was running. I had to pick the actors up from home. I had to do anything basically,
Okay.
anything I needed. And then from that moment, the production manager from that film took me onto, which is where the key bit comes into, an Alison Owen production.
Okay. Which
Um,
one was that?
it's called Is Harry on the Boat? And I was UK runner. And I went from becoming starting as UK runner. I forget what credit I ended up with in the end, but I essentially sort of worked my way up the ranks in the space of about 3 or 4 months, where I was UK runner, and by the end of it, I'd been flown to Ibiza to help with the whole team while they're shooting Ibiza, and I was sat next to Alison Owen, and we sort of ended up, kind of working extremely closely together and kind of keeping a show on the road. It was Ibiza and it was like the 2000s and everybody was amazing and glorious and sexy and chaotic all at the same time. And as a kind of overreaching human as I sometimes can be, of wanting to get mixed in and go as high up the food chain as possible, um or as wanted to become a producer, I threw myself through full throttle, and met Alison. And then Alison, embarrassingly, well, not embarrassingly, Alison said to me, look, I'd love you to come back to London with me. Will you come and work with me as my assistant? And at this point, of course, I was making this TV series in Ibiza. It was back when the internet was a computer in the corner, and you had to book to go on it to book the flight. That was one of the things I did. And I was sort of like, you know what? I want to make movies, really. I don't really want to make TV. And this is a woman who just not long been nominated the Oscar for Elizabeth. I mean, I was such a fool. And good on Alison. Alison said to me, I tell you what, she didn't pipe up and tell me anything. She said, look, if you come back with me, I promise you will make films.
Okay.
And I was like, you know what, all right, I'll come back to you. I'll come back with you for a bit. I'll do it till Christmas. And one of the first things she did is she got me to write, she dictated a log line for Sylvia.
Oh.
And she said, here's a book, The Bell Jar. Can you send this over to Gwyneth Paltrow for me? And I was like, oh, okay, she's
Okay.
fancy. Maybe
She's a
this
real
might
worry.
work out.
Yeah.
And then so I started as Alison's assistant, and I became Alison's business partner in the space of 12 years.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about how, I think not everybody's going to give you that chance, and Alison did give you that chance, but also you were making that happen too. You weren't just like a passive assistant who was like, oh no, I don't want to do anymore. Like, how did you sort of do the work that was required of an assistant, but show that you were going to be more, if you know what I mean? Like, and I mean, like, even as an assistant, like, you make the right phone call, you do the right photocopying, and people notice you do your assistant job well. But how did you sort of make signal that you were needed to go up the ranks?
Yeah. I mean, I think in fairness, being in a very small office, and Alison as a human, of how open she is about things, was helpful. It wasn't like there was 25 of us and we were all in different sections. Me and Alison were in this tight little bubble with a couple of colleagues at the time that came and went. One amazing woman called Neris Thomas, who is incredible. I think it was about always being hungry and sort of always being alert and on. It is about, like, sometimes someone asks you to do something, and it's about trying to figure out and understand what the context of you doing it and why, and whether you can be helpful, and whether you can, you know, it's not just, can I have a cast list? Can you give me some cast list ideas for this project? It's like, well, I can give you cast list ideas, here they are. But also I was thinking, I think these two are actually really good. Or it's just like always trying to not just do the thing in a very reductive, in that way. Somebody of when you're in a senior position, you can have 50 emails that you won't have read because you'd ask 50 people really great stuff that you need to do stuff, but what you have to do is after 50 emails, and it's like, how do you help, obviously not do their job for them because that's not their position, but like help move something on. So I used to always think about that. And I was always taught, maybe by Alison, I don't know who, but there's no such answer as no. And by that, it's not like, oh no, they said they can't do it. They said they can't book that place, whatever it is. And so, so give you the bad news, we can't get that place, but I've thought about three others. Here are the
Yeah.
three others. So that's the perfect example of
Yeah.
that kind of thing. And finding those quiet moments to go, can I understand, why did you meet the writer before you met the director? Why did you do that before that? And then if I got her on the right bit, she'd be, oh, because
Yeah. If she had time and was in
it's
the right headspace,
important. It's
she could
important that
do
the
that
writer feels
mentoring.
like they're owning this moment, or whatever the thing was. She would, if I caught her on the right moment, I'd ask her what those sort of very minutiae things were of why those decisions were making. And I have to say again, a bit of luck. We were also in a period of time which, ironically, at the time, I don't think either one of us were very conscious of. We were making a lot of stuff.
Yeah. When you look back at that time, was there any certain project, any film that you felt was quite pivotal for your learning, or just that you're extremely proud, or you look back on with special fondness? I mean, there's some great films.
I think all of them, in some ways, all of them have a journey, a large journey. Other Boleyn Girl was my first associate producer credit, and it's one of those credits that I got after the fact, because I worked so hard on it, and I was, well, I hopefully, hence why I got the credit, integral to it, of the sort of, the careful threading of things at times, of course, not getting it financed and all those things, but also that was a bit where made me meet Pete Morgan, and was very much intricately part of that, which, later on we'll come on to, but then I worked with Pete again on The Crown. But I'd say the key bit was Brick Lane in some respects, because actually the Other Boleyn Girl was happening. We had this tiny little TV show, and we had Brick Lane, and because of all those things being so busy, and obviously Other Boleyn Girl was this big beast that I was not left with at all. Alison was very much around on Brick Lane, but that relationship between me and Sarah became watertight. We were
Yeah.
really,
Alison needed you to take more.
yeah. I mean, Sarah
Platform.
just really got on, and we
This
have
is Sarah Gavron. Yeah.
yeah, Sarah Gavron, and we have a really great. Well, I'd say that. Hopefully, she says the same thing. We've made lots of films together since, but we have a really great little kind of creative huddle, tussle, whatever you want to call it. We sort of think alike. We know each other so well now that we can have really great, frank conversations about material, whatever it is. Of going, what do you think? These are my worries. These are not. And that Brick Lane did that for me and Sarah. It felt like we were in the trenches together, along with Abby and Alison and
Yeah.
everybody, but it really made that relationship tight for both of us.
We'll come back to her, I hope.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's go on to The Crown, because I mean, what an amazing game-changing series. And did you work on that on behalf of Ruby, or did Peter just ask you separately? How did that
No,
work?
I'd left Ruby. I'd left Ruby to make Suffragette. Well, it was a sort of coming to the end of the relationship of assistant to business partner. You could imagine that's a long thing, and it was sort of time to fly. So when we got Suffragette greenlit, and again, that was because Sarah and I are so close. That was something I was leading on a little bit more. So it was the right time to go. I'm gonna fly the ship of Ruby, but I'm gonna focus on Suffragette and get that finished. Um, and so I was going it alone. I say going it alone. I was, to be honest, walking into the abyss. I didn't know what I was gonna do or how I was gonna do it. And to be honest, I was slightly burnt out too. I was sort of, that's why it was time to leave Ruby, and I just was working non-stop. I mean, I always work non-stop, but I just got to that bit where I just had to sort of make a change. And I got a phone call from Left Bank to say, would I be interested? Just coming on, by the way, they developed it and all this
Yeah.
stuff. And I'd never been on anyone else's production, so I was like, this is super cool. And obviously I knew Pete. I had no idea Pete had put me in for it or whatever. I think it was a bit of a coincidence. But then, of course, the moment I went in to see Andy, and then I said, oh, I know Pete. And then I saw Pete. And so it was really lovely. I mean, it really, thank Andy Harris for letting me come on to series one, because it was so interesting watching a big series like that being put together, and being part of those big meetings about what is the show, how is the show, what does it look like, how do we do it? It was really great. And I knew a lot of the team, all the practical team. I knew most of them because most of them work on Suffragette or other projects I'd worked
Mm.
on. So I felt like I slotted in great, and it was really just interesting to see how Left Bank make things, and something of that size.
Yeah. Yeah, was that intimidating to walk onto I mean, you've been on big sets, but just the scale and ambition of that show is something we hadn't quite seen in the UK in an episodic, I think. I mean,
Oddly, it wasn't. I don't know what was why, because I think oddly, because Netflix had not long appeared on the radar. Yes, it was big and ambitious, but also because we've made a couple of things about kings and queens and
yeah.
bits and pieces too. That, and it was people I know. I don't know. I think I was just
It was
like, oh, this
easy.
is the
Yeah.
new magic Netflix that appeared on the radar. This is what life's like. We're going to make these big things, and also, I was extremely held. Like Left Bank's this incredible, brilliant. They were all really brilliant hands-on execs too.
Mm.
So coming in to produce some episodes and to work closely with the directors, it's just everyone got stuck in. It was a really
Yeah.
good experience.
And then when you set up Fable, was Stan and Ollie the first sort of solo big lead producer job you had? I mean, Suffragette, Alison was still involved.
Yeah, Alison was still involved on that one. Yes, it probably was. I mean, when I left Ruby, I had Wild Rose, the
Oh, well,
screenplay, a very different version, but not very different, a version of it, but in a, I'd taken a couple of, or Alison had given me, taken some projects with me, and Wild Rose was one of them, but Stan and Ollie had come onto after Suffragette as an individual.
Okay.
At that point, it was Harvey Weinstein had it, and was asked to come on board. So I was, well, Harvey Weinstein, Jeff Pope, and John Baird had it. So we were shepherding it at that time. So I had both in tandem with a little bit of sort of starting chatter on rocks.
Okay.
So when I opened Fable, the ambition was to make at least one of them. Obviously, lucky for us, we ended up making all three,
Yeah.
which was great.
Rocks for me is sort of a pivotal British film of the past few decades. I mean, I just think it's such a special film to watch, but also just how it was made and this quite open and communal way of working. Can you just talk through, was Rocks a very special process? How did you have to convince people to work in a slightly different way, or did it feel quite traditional the way it was made, or how
Well,
did it
not
all?
one element was traditional.
Okay, good. So I was right about that. But I love the
Yeah.
film. Yeah.
No, I mean, yeah, everything was different. The development process was quite hard because, in some respects, Sarah and I were just going into rooms with financiers to say, we've got an idea about girls. And we could thematically talk about what that was, but we'd also say, but the whole point of it is we don't want to impose our ideas on these young women. And we don't even want to impose on what these young what their makeup would be, i.e., where they're from, who they are, and that we would need money to develop an idea and cast the idea all in one go because they're a tandem. Like it's not like we ever had a script that said there is a Muslim girl or
Yeah.
there is a Nigerian girl. It was more like we've got these thematic ideas, we've got a bunch of stories that may or may not be relevant. But really, what we're going to do is once we find these magic humans, we're going to create the idea around them, but using their originality and their. So it felt like we were never imposing whom they should be on it. It was them telling us who they are.
Was
Obviously
that
in a
also
fictional sense.
reflected in how it was structured in terms of paying them, or anything like that? I mean, did you sort of try to break down the barriers of
No, not
like,
not so much in regards to the paying, but in regards to the collaborative process of how we would talk about it. They they knew the A to Z of the material, and they would have pages at different points. But again, it's not like they were ever delivered before they went on set 110-page script and said, this is what we're shooting. It felt like what Sarah was always trying to achieve was she knew the highs and the lows, and we did have dialogue that we can do and we did do, but that we would allow an organic process within that to happen. It's a tiny bit, a little bit like how maybe theatre would do things, a
yeah.
little bit. Yeah, I mean, it was a really interesting process. And then, of course, when we crewed it, it was important that we wanted the people in the crew to look like the people who were on set.
Yeah.
Um, uh, and so in turn, a lot of people were new. Not
Yeah.
everybody,
Yeah.
or some people got, were asked to do a senior role and they hadn't done before, and then others not, and others we put in as sort of stability blocks.
Yeah.
We had the amazing Alice Normington did a design. She's done a few movies with me and Sarah, and she was really great because we also needed to organically come in and out of locations, sometimes unplanned
Hmm.
ways, but that was the preference to Sarah would be unplanned. But we felt that one thing we needed was a designer who had been around the block a lot to can help us navigate the
Hmm.
practicals of that.
And when you were starting Fable, and maybe now looking to now too, like what would you say this is sort of ethos of Fable, the kinds of work you want to make? Everybody kind of says, oh, we know it when we see it. Is there something you can pinpoint about the kinds of stories you want Fable to tell?
I think so, and hopefully on the outside people can see it too. We really like working class stories,
Yeah.
not essential. We love underdog stories.
Yeah.
we love someone who's trying to fight the corner or a thing that they
Mm.
wanted. Um, our stories have I hope anyway, a kind of an emotional, I call it an emotional surge, a very big filmic, um, emotional thing. Like I hope you laugh at the right bits and cry, or laugh at some bits and cry at some bits. Doesn't matter if they're different bits. Um, and some of them are a tiny bit political, but they're
Yeah.
political with a small p. You know, Wild Rose isn't about politics, but is it about somebody who maybe who people would regard as shouldn't deserve to have a dream, or shouldn't, it's been compartmentalized in a thing
Mm.
because they've been to prison and they've done this thing, whatever the thing is. And does that mean that you still can't be incredibly talented and dream? No, you're allowed to do everything like that, you know. And it's also about people's presumptions of people who are, if you're young and had children, and you know. So again, they're not political with a capital B, but they have these sort of small, we call them small fires in the belly.
I like that. Small fire in the belly.
Yeah.
Um, and another reason I thought you were really fancy, not that you're not fancy, and it shouldn't matter, was when Fable was launching, or pretty soon into its launch, you announced a deal with Sony.
Yeah.
And can you just tell, you told me this on this panel we did, and I was like, wait, what? That's all it took? Not that's all, but tell us about how you got that Sony deal.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, there's a lot of my stuff's quite lucky, to be honest. But when I was on The Crown, there was a dinner one evening before we started shooting, and I got sat next to Wayne Garvey, who's, forget his fancy title, head of international television drama at Sony. He's like the, you know, head of international, basically, he's top guy. Really, really lovely man. And we got chatting, and he was asking what I was doing outside the Crown, and I was like, oh, you know, I think I'm going to set a company up. I've been thinking about it, mainly because I sort of got my groove back. There's a bit of IP that I really want to buy, and I think if I start collecting a few bits, I feel like don't want to do it on my own. Um, so I probably need like at least one member of staff, and I feel like I should probably just do something. And I'd lucky enough been offered, only provisionally, but a couple of different deals. But like from television, it was when TV deals were these new things, or there was a surge of them. And I said, to be honest, I just don't really understand what they're saying to me. They talk in a completely different language, and I don't really know. And he said, oh, that's funny. That's what I do. And I said, oh, do you? That's really good to know. Can I come in and talk to you? And can you sort of decipher what some of these
Like,
stuff
yeah.
means? We carried on chatting. And he'd also said, if you want any IP bought for television, you're welcome to ask me. So we put in, we had a little bit of email, and we put a time in the diary for a month later, whatever, to talk about the company. And then a week in, Chocolate Wars, the book, became available, which I wanted to buy when I was at Reeby. We really lost out to it. I think it was David Thompson at the time.
Mm.
Deborah Cadbury book about the invention of the chocolate bar. It's actually really really amazing business compendium of Cadbury's over 200 years. But I always knew, I was like, it's an amazing TV series. So I'd just come available. So I called him and I said, I really want to make a TV series. And like I pitched the whole thing to him. I said, but I need 10,000 quid and for the option. And I pitched it to him on the phone, and he said, yeah, okay, I'll give it to you. So I did the deal and got the option. And then because we'd already sort of started that chatter and then started the company chatter, we just really got on. And I told him all the other little things that I had in the ether and the things I was excited about. And he said, and I was really open. I said, look, I really don't want to. I saw how we did it at Ruby. And by the way, there's no difference now, really, to be honest. But at the time, I was like, you know, I really feel like I want an investor. It's too difficult to do it without. I need some help. And he said, all right, I'd like to do that. I'd like to help. I'd like to give you some money.
Amazing.
I know. I
Yeah.
know. I mean, obviously, it was a bit more complicated than that, but that's.
Yes, I know. And it's not just luck. It's not that you get sat at some mate's dinner and somebody gives you a load of money. You have to be really smart and be on your game. And it was just right place, right time, kind of.
Yeah, yeah, it's a completely right time. I mean, it really was. And, you know, I love working with the Sony team. They're really great. And, you know, you always want to partner with people who are better than you at other things you don't know. And I think maybe also I was honest.
Oh,
I was like, I don't really know
I
how
don't know
to
what
build a
this kind of
business. I
game
tell you
is.
what, I can tell a story and I can know how to get a story to a screen. and I can give you what my instincts are and what is an original story that might try and, leapfrog other people's other ideas.
Mm.
That's the bit I can do. But when it comes to building a company, and all those things, I don't know, but I'd love to partner with someone who's interested in doing that.
And is that project still alive?
You know what? Actually, I can't say totally, but I think it's really going to get made very soon.
Okay, amazing.
I know. It's taken 7 or 8 years, so it's taken a long time from that moment.
And can you mention, I mean, you did Whole Razors, but Mr. Loverman, I think, really is that kind of amazing prestige TV that everybody
Yeah.
aspires to do. How long did that take to get?
That pretty much, I bought that book in the same
Oh,
2
same
weeks or
time.
something. Sony didn't give me development money for that. I can't quite remember how. Oh, Channel 4 might have actually originally. Yeah, it was originally at Channel 4. Gave me money for that. So that's another project that took at least 7 years to get to being made. And it went through, different, like I said, it started at Channel 4 and then ended up at the BBC, ended up with Nathaniel writing it. And in some respects, Mr. Loverman's been my TV baby.
Yeah,
I've been obsessed with making that TV series for years, and
amazing.
it's just sort of we didn't get it right when we were at Channel 4. It wasn't creatively right, and sometimes that happens. You go down these dead ends, and you got to come out the other side to know. But I sort of just constantly knew that it was like such a beautiful, brilliant book. Every time I read it, I was like, so good.
Yeah. It's just amazing to see also the audience love for that
Yeah,
series and, critics and awards and all that too. But that feels like it's made a real impact, that show. Um, I hope I'm not going to get myself in trouble. I hate like a women in film panel and I hate asking what's it like being a woman in film. And I don't ask that. But I am going to ask you about being a mother because you had twins, I
yeah.
think around the same time you were setting up Fable. And I just think I'm in awe. Like, how can you get through that? How do you still juggle that? I mean, how, running your own business and having like infant twins or toddler twins or young
Yeah.
people twins, how do you do that?
To be honest, I don't know. I think I've probably still got quite a lot of trauma that I honestly genuinely feel like they're 5 now. I feel like, and there was COVID thrown into the middle of that. There was all sorts of, I mean, it was just like they're premature. There was like this bonkers amount of stuff. It's really hard having the twins and working so much. The one major change I did is I put the office right near my house.
Ah,
Lucky for me, I was able to do that in COVID because, obviously nobody had offices for a minute or two. So I was able to move the office to Balham, which is right near me. And yeah, the thing is hard. And the thing that I do most is because I'm at the office, it means I can be at the office till 6:45 and then run home for bath time.
yeah.
um, as much as I can every night, and obviously it can't always be every night. Um, and yeah, I honestly, people think I'm crazy. I send people like my production planners I do for more productions. I send them out to like my mum and my dad, my husband, the childminder, so everyone knows what they're doing every day for at least 6 or to 8 weeks going forwards. I
Amazing.
spend like 2 hours once a month sorting everything out and booking everything. I basically treat them like a production
Yeah. Well, it
on
keeps
a
everybody
practical level.
organized. Everybody knows what they need to do.
Yeah. But I
Um,
also, what I really want to always put the message out is that, I do get asked quite a lot of questions about motherhood, and I'm always very, very happy to talk about it because it's one of the hardest juggles to do. But even though it is very hard, it's never someone shouldn't be put off because they want a great career. I think it's, you can do both if you want to do both. You don't need to do either or any of it. But it's life's life. It's like I really always wanted children, and took us a long while to have the babies, and we got them. And that was to me was more of a priority in some respects than the job.
okay.
Um, and now just juggle it as much as I can. There are times where of course I put the children over the job. So sometimes if I do get offer, I'm lucky for me, a production that's in another side of the world, I will say most of the time will say no,
Yeah.
because I can't do it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah,
Nobody can do everything, and everybody's got their
exactly.
challenges.
Yeah.
But yeah, I am aware that if I was talking to a male producer who had twins, I wouldn't necessarily ask about them. But
No, but I think it's important because I
maybe I
think so
should.
many young filmmakers, women in particular, ask me and producers, and I think it's important to sort of tell it how it is a little bit, I think.
What do you think is really good about producing in the UK right now, and what is really a challenge about
God.
producing in the UK?
I think what I would say is I think the wave of cinema is back a bit. I think people are hungry for new material. I think you have to make it outnumber,
Yeah.
preferably under a 6 and if not under a 4.
Yeah.
But you know, films are doing well at the minute, and
Yeah.
in turn the distribution are excited for more films, so this is a good time to get the films in there. How you quite get them financed and how you get them bank loaned and stuff is another thing, but there's a moment where there is you can see there's appetite. So
Mm.
you've got a great idea and you've got a script, it's a really good time. I think development across TV and film is very difficult at the minute. Of course, there's the Magic BBC films and Magic Film 4.
Mm.
I haven't worked with the BFI for quite a bit of time actually, but and I know they're great. But you know, they both have their own tastes, I find. So if
Yes.
you're out of that taste factor, there's not really that many homes for development, and that's the thing we find quite difficult.
Mm.
Those movies, one of the reasons why we've not made a movie for quite a while is we've got a few movies that haven't got development funding. So gorgeous writers are either writing them at a very cut down rate or writing in between the TV stuff they're writing for us to kind of balance that. And that means it takes 4 years to get an amazing script that's out for reading rather than, you know, 18 months or a year.
And yeah, what's right now? Is your slate sort of half and half, film and TV, or I mean, it depends on what gets funded and goes, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the company was always the idea was I had a couple of movie scripts, I never had a TV slate. Let's make some movies, and then while we do that, we grow the TV slate, and that's sort of pretty much what we did. Lucky enough for us, the TV probably was a bit slower than we anticipated because of COVID and bits and pieces and babies and everything. So I hope, and also now we've got our BBC One accolade. We've ticked that box, which I'm very proud about. Um, who knows what will end up, and also the markets are quite dicey actually in TV.
Yeah.
So you know, we're pushing both uphill quite a lot at the minute.
Yeah. I also feel like you're not one of those people that talks more than works. We probably all know a few people who just like shout about themselves in their slate constantly and are at every party and
I
everything.
mean, you'll never see me at a party on the whole.
No. And I don't really just I don't hear you talking about your work that much. And is that sort of intentional, or you just like the work to speak for itself, or is it just you're too busy?
I'm just basically working all the time.
Yeah.
I just constantly do that thing where I'm just constantly catching my tail cash flow wise to keep the company afloat. And if I'm not doing that, we're lucky we might have something in production or about to try to get into prep. So um and because of the kids, I don't tend to really socialize very much. So if I do get to socialize, I'm only out like one night a month, if that, with my friends. So I don't know. I don't tend to do a lot of outside work stuff just because there's just only so much time I've got in the world.
Yeah, we all have certain bandwidth.
No, but you know what? Actually, it's interesting you say that because one of my, you know, we did a company, you have employee reviews. You know, one of my reviews, one of my things to the younger members of the team is that I'm always like, you know, how I know all the commissioners and people now, not all of them, some of them, is we all used to go out on a Friday night with each other, you know, and we were young and we were all assistants, you know, and I'm just trying to get them to, and so they've started doing an assistants drinks once a month, and
Oh, cool.
that's evolving into something more, which is great. And but it actually made me think the other day, and every now and again when I do go to like a great BFI drinks or something, it's actually so lovely and it's really enjoyable. And it's not that I avoid it from not being enjoyable, but
No.
I do think to yourself, sometimes actually you do get quite a lot of work done even at those things, even though you feel like, oh, do I need, you know, is it just enjoyable?
Yeah.
Um,
No, but I do think there's a balance. And yeah, there's some people who are at every party but haven't produced anything in 10 years. And it's like, I think you need a balance there,
yeah.
you know. And have you shot anything recently, or what's going to be next to shoot? Don't ruin
Loverman
any
pretty much was,
spoilers, you know.
no, Mr. Loverman was pretty much the last thing we shot. Um, nothing of note to tell you at the minute. We've got a gorgeous little film that I'm really excited about that Polly Findley's directing,
Okay.
but that's not greenlit yet. We're still putting the finance together. And maybe Chocolate Wars TV series.
Okay. And on this series, I always ask everybody, what is your pet peeve on a set? What just annoys you that people do on a set?
Oh God, moan. Can't bear moaning.
Yeah.
Like we live in these amazing fictional worlds. Even when it's tough, it's like, even when it's really tough and it feels really tough, I think to myself, we could be, I don't know. I mean, there's anything wrong with being a delivery driver or working in Sainsbury's, but like we're like in the middle of East London or we're in the middle of somewhere, and like we don't need to like. There's lots of things we don't need to moan about this. So
Yeah.
I'd say moaning is probably one of my pet peeves. Um, and hanging around,
Yeah.
time wasting. But not
Okay.
really time waste, but you know what it is.
Yeah.
I get itchy feet if I
Yeah.
feel like things aren't moving.
Yeah. Fair enough. And big question to end is, what do you think people misunderstand what a producer really does? What are the sort of misconceptions out there? I think even within people who work in the industry sometimes still think, oh, the producer's just the money person. Not true, but what do you think people don't really understand about what producers do?
I think people have not got a clue what producers do at all. I think also producers seem to have like a bad persona of like we're the like money grabbers and we just want all the money. I mean, as I'm sure you're very aware, I'm sure anyone who's been on your podcast, probably for the last 5, 10 years, any movie under $10 million, most producers have given not some of their fee, probably all of their
All of
fee
their
to get that
fee,
made,
which is
which
shocking.
basically means they're not getting paid. Can you imagine asking the gaffer to not get paid or the catering to not get paid? And this is a project we probably would have worked on for 5 years. We've
Yeah,
shepherded it the whole time. We've negotiated every bit of it. And at the very last minute, for everyone else to get paid and for the thing to get made, you have to give up all your fees. And there's no wonder the only people that are really making money in the industry are people of privilege, because they're the ones that can live life in their amazing, glorious places without having to worry about how to put money on the table
yeah.
and everyone's wages. And I think that is the thing that needs to change pretty damn rapidly.
I mean, this is probably too big a question to put onto you today, Faye, but how can we make sure producers don't waive their fees or defer their fees or cut their fees? I mean, you work on something so long and you want to see it get made, but why should you have to not get paid for it to get made?
I don't know how to solve it in truth. I think I think maybe the people who are gap financing maybe should, I'm not putting the owners completely on them, but they do take the highest risk. I get that. But I do think sometimes their fees of how much that risk, when the film's a success, how much they get back, when the producers on the whole don't get back anything.
Hmm.
I think we just have to make sure that if people are deferring, that there is a way of getting that money back at some point. And if anything, preferably they don't have to defer, and that everyone has to be, if people want the movie, that everyone has to put in a bit of risk on it, which I know everybody does already. It's not
Yeah.
about saying, they should put more money in, but it is really tough.
Yeah, I don't have the answer either. I know some public funders are saying we're not going to fund films if producers aren't being paid. I don't know if that's, talk and not action, but I mean, it's just ludicrous to me that sometimes the producer is the driving engine of a whole project for
Mm.
many years, and to not be paid for that is shocking. So, one reason I wanted
Yeah.
to do these talks.
No, but I do also think there is a bizarre thing going on, and of course, can we what cross TV and movies? That there are a higher echelon, which there always has been. I'm not suggesting
Yeah.
people who work making big stuff shouldn't get paid, but the disparity of the millions that goes in one pocket uh, and not the other, it is very weird. It is very bizarre, and I think everyone, if everyone still wants to make interesting stuff and create a pipeline of great talent, both on and off camera,
Mm.
that sort of load has to be shared across the
Yeah,
board. Otherwise, you're going to just have a dearth of not many talent, both on screen and behind
yeah,
screen, actually getting a break, because
yeah. Getting good work.
the likelihood, has there been a Wild Rose since Wild Rose? There hasn't been. And that's the reason why, is because no one's financing them. So has there been a Jess Buckley? No, there hasn't.
Yeah.
And it's not that Jess is ridiculously talented and off
Mm.
the scale, but there'll be another 10 or 50, 20, 100 Jess Buckley.
Ready to go on something interesting if they get
Yeah. And
paid.
they've not got you've not had the experience to work on a tiny movie in the bit part, to go, oh God, I've learned how to do that now, to then go on to another bit, to then finally get that lead. They don't just get propelled to that, they've worked really hard. And I think there's something in the pipeline at the minute that needs to be balanced.
Okay. Good luck, everyone.
I
Faye Ward, not
haven't got time to solve that though, so someone else has to solve it.
They were not a Nepo baby, and keep fighting the good fight. And I'm friends with Nepo babies. It's fine. We need them in the world too.
I am
They're not
too.
bad.
So,
Yeah. Okay. We need them financing stuff.
yeah.
Faye, thank you so much for the chat, and really keep making this amazing work that we all need
Well,
more.
thanks so much, Brenda. I really appreciate you asking me. It's lovely.